lives are like this, that the things that we continuously do, even if they're bad for us, we kind of settle into them in our bodies, our lives actually. Our lives start to demand those negative things. So what you have to do is to reset like the gut bacteria of your life, I guess is a way of thinking about it. You have to reset yourself so that leisure time or downtime becomes important to you. And you start to realize, hopefully you start to realize sooner than later, there's no such thing as downtime or leisure time or work time or even family time or hobby time. There's only lifetime. So I ask you that question. If you've got no legs and I tell you to climb Cowles Mountain, I imagine the overwhelming number of us wouldn't even think about it because it's not possible. Is it possible? Yeah, I've seen people do it with no legs. What do? They climb, they crawl, they do what they have to. They do whatever it takes. And the funny thing is, they're doing it for fun. Imagine climbing the highest peak in San Diego, with no legs for fun. What do you suppose they do when they have to? What do you suppose they do when their career depends on it, when their livelihood depends on it, when the people they love depend on them? What's the thing you want to do in your life? And really think about that at some point. You won't pursue it unless you realize. I'm not saying believe, I'm saying realize it's possible. Why not you? And that's a hell of a question. Ask yourself, why not you? So what is it that distinguishes a person who shows up versus a person who doesn't? Like, why does one person do it and another doesn't? And we all seem to agree on it, like, oh, it's just a decision. Yeah, but why though? Why would one person make the decision and another person not? And what is it that motivates one person to follow through and doesn't motivate another person to follow through? And we can chalk it off and just say, well, we're all just different. I mean, we're not all different, by the way. We all seem to fit into a very specific number of categories. But figuring out that answer is really important to, obviously, our own lives, because we can figure out what motivates me. If I want to accomplish something, what do I have to have in place in order to pursue it? And I'm motivated, and I have the willpower, the capacity, but also the follow through. In other words, why do I follow through on certain things and not follow through on other things? Because I wonder if there's anybody in here who doesn't feel that there are things that you want to do and things that you know you should be doing, but strangely, for some reason, the things that we want to do, we don't do. And the things that we don't want to do, we end up doing. Anybody ever sat there in the morning and decided, you know what, I'm gonna get some things done today, but first, I'm gonna relax, set my mind straight, and play some video games just to, bring my, just to start the day, and all of a sudden, it's like 4 p.m. And you're like, how have I been here for 6 hours? Or something else, if it's scrolling, if it's watching TikTok videos, we're like, I'm just gonna watch a couple of videos right now, just entertain myself. But after that, I'm on this. And all of a sudden, it's like 2 hours later. Like, how did I get here this fast? The things I want to do, I don't do. But the things I do want to do, for some reason, I can't get myself to do it. How many people decide that they're gonna go on a diet, which is a bad way of thinking about it. A better way of thinking about it is to change my eating patterns rather than just like a short-term diet. But how many of us think like, I'm gonna start eating better, I'm gonna get into better shape, but first, I have this bag of cookies I need to eat in my house. And once I get rid of these cookies, it's over. Now I'm gonna start, Monday morning, I'm gonna start. Why not today? Why wait till Monday? Why polish off that bag of chips or cookies? Why not toss them? Why not throw them away? Well, all of a sudden we become conservationists. I don't want to be wasteful. There are children in Africa who don't have bags of Oreos, so I need to not waste those bags of Oreos. Yeah, but we think nothing at all of throwing out that bag of carrots that's been in our fridge since, since the Obama administration. Yeah. For some reason, we can keep those things around. And it's worth figuring out because we oftentimes think like it just comes down to a matter of want. I just don't want to, or I do want this, but what is it that motivates those wants in us? Our lives are like this, that the things that we continuously do, even if they're bad for us, we kind of settle into them, and our bodies, our lives actually, our lives start to demand those negative things. So what you have to do is to reset like the gut bacteria of your life, I guess is a way of thinking about it. You have to reset yourself so that leisure time or downtime becomes important to you. And you start to realize, hopefully you start to realize sooner than later, there's no such thing as downtime or leisure time or work time or even family time or hobby time. There's only lifetime. It's just that one thing. And how you divide that up, of course, goes into those categories, but not like it's set aside. It's how you decide to divide that thing up. And so finding out what it is that motivates you to do the things that you want to do, and actually to change the want. That's what I was getting at earlier. In other words, I want to have sugar until I get used to not having it. I can change my body chemistry to the point that I no longer desire it. I now want carrots and salad or whatever. To reset the bacteria of my life so that I no longer want to waste time and have this leisure time. Like, it sounds strange to us, like, but how would you want to, how could you live without having all that stuff? Because you don't want it. You don't want the downtime. You don't want the leisure time. You want the time that actually builds you up and motivates you. Now, you're never going to always have that. But like, as I was saying, you think about like a professional athlete. Does a professional athlete every day go out there and say, can't wait to work out today, can't wait to train today, can't wait to do sprints today? No. That athlete's very, very rare. Kobe Bryant was like that. He'd win an NBA championship, and he was back on the court practicing the next day, getting ready for next season. Those people are very rare. But the person who can motivate themselves to get out there as soon as possible after the season is over, or after the effort is over, and start to work at it again, that's the champion. I know I'm being kind of broad here, but I'll make it more concrete, hopefully. Why on earth would Kobe Bryant go out there the very next day after a championship and keep practicing? Because he knows a championship is possible. He knows that last season, when the season was over, the very next day he was on the court and he develops those habits of success. Last year, I did this is what worked, and so now I'm gonna keep working at it. If you're on a team that never wins an NBA championship, every year you guys lose most of your games, those are probably gonna be the people who don't get on the court the next day when the season's over, because it just doesn't seem possible to them. And I would suggest that's one of the things that's really important in our lives, motivation. That for you to be motivated, you have to realize that something is possible. If you have no legs, and I tell you, hey, you should go climb Cowles Mountain, is that going to sound possible to you? If you have no legs, how about this? If you have no legs, and I tell you, all right, do some burpees, is that going to be possible for you? Did I tell you about the kid who does burpees with no legs? I used to coach this kid in Krav Maga. It's a self-defense thing. His dad called me up one time and said, his son has spina bifida. You guys know what spina bifida is? It's when your spine's all jacked up and he has no feeling in his legs. So he called me up and told me his son was being bullied. His family didn't have much money, so he's like, we can't really afford tuition, but if you can, try to work something out with me. It's at my old gym. I said, wait, he's being bullied at school? Yeah. I go, just bring him in. No problem. And he's like, well, we've contacted a few other places. He's in a wheelchair, and they can't have wheelchairs on the mats. I said, dude, just bring him in and we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Comes in, this kid's 12 years old. He's almost 200 pounds. He's a big kid. And I just thought, holy crap, this sucks. I find out later on, by the way, the reason he has spina bifida is because his mom got bronchitis when she was pregnant, and she didn't know she was pregnant. So they gave her antibiotics for the bronchitis without checking first. And so because of that, he developed spina bifida in utero, which sucks. Because I'm looking at this kid who's 12 years old, who's like my height at the time, but like an extra 50 pounds heavier, not fat, just a big, strong kid. I just thought, my God, his dad was a Marine, his dad wrestled, his dad played football. And you look at this kid and you go, my God, what could this kid have done if he had use of his legs? He had no use of his legs. He had to wear a diaper because he didn't really have control over his bowels either. Everything from like here down just didn't quite work. I found out at one point that this kid ended up with second-degree burns on his legs because he went to the park. You guys go to the park with, like, on the slide, the metal slide, when it's really hot and sunny. You remember that? And you guys would like, you touch it, you jump up, right? 'Cause it's hot. He doesn't feel that. So he was just chilling, and his skin actually like stuck to the slide. And he had like pulled his skin off and everything, so he had to have like surgeries and things for it. Yeah, that's how bad he was. I actually have videos of myself beating him up. It's in a folder on my USB drive called "Me Beating Up a Crippled Kid," because yeah, you've seen it. So the kid comes in, and I just gave him the rules. I said, first off, you're in a wheelchair. I said, I don't give a shit. I don't feel bad for you. And you have other things going on in your life. I said, we all have something going on. I said, you have spina bifida. I sunburn really easily. Okay, we're all struggling with our own things. I really told him that, by the way. And then he was. I put it shortly. So I told him, if you're going to be here, I'm not going to feel bad for you. I'm going to train you like I train anybody else, because the people who are bullying you at school don't feel bad for you. They're like running up behind him and like dumping him out of his wheelchair and everything. So I said, so first thing first, I taught him how to stop people from dumping him out of his wheelchair. And the way I did that was I showed him the things, we trained it, and then I was going around trying to dump him out of his wheelchair. Oh, it gets better. And then I told the people at my gym, anybody who can dump Michael out of his wheelchair gets a free t-shirt. So if we're just sitting here talking and I'm showing him something and you run up behind him and dump him out of his wheelchair, I'll give you a free t-shirt. Yeah, and of course there are some, like I'm sure some of you like, that's terrible. Some of you were like, free t-shirts is free t-shirts. So fortunately I had enough people at my gym who thought free t-shirts is free t-shirts. And so I had people who I'd be talking to him, I'd even distract him like, hey, so Michael, let me show you something over here real quick. And he would, yeah, what's up, coach? And people would run up behind him and try and dump him out of his chair. And he got to a point where he was able to stop that from happening. And then, I taught him, if you do end up on the ground, here's how you can wrestle people onto the ground, and here's how you could beat the hell out of them if you can get them on the ground. Anyway, he ends up later on down, well, actually, I'll get to that part at the end. So I told him, so we had a thing at my gym, if you left your gear behind, you owed 15 burpees to get your gear back. So you left like your shin guards or your gloves or whatever. So one day he comes rolling in. I didn't mean it, but that's a good pun. One day he comes rolling in late, almost late, and he told me, oh, coach, I couldn't find my gloves. I said, yeah, you left them here last time. And we had like a rack that had the gear on it. So he's like, oh, he comes in, he's like, where are they? I said, they're on the rack. And it's like, higher up rack, He's like looking at me. I'm like, don't look at me, dude. Class starts in 5 minutes, figure it out. He's like, how am I supposed to get him down? I go, I don't know. I told you what to do in the first place. Don't leave your gear behind. You didn't do that, so now you need to figure out the solution. So he's like trying to shake it. I go, dude, if that rack falls and you die. So he's like looking, and then I said, oh, by the way, once you get those things down, you owe me 15 burpees. He's like, looks at me, and he looks at his dad. His dad, again, former Marine, black dude, he's just standing there, big old buff dude. He's like, figure it out, son. I'm like, yeah. So this kid's just, boom, hops out of his own wheelchair, climbs his ass up the rack, gets the gloves, climbs himself back down. I'm looking at him, I'm impressed, but you can't tell them, So I'm looking at him like, burpees. He's like looking, and he's got, I don't have any legs. I said, you have legs. They just don't work, So he gets down, does a push-up, looks up, climbs himself up the rack, and then lowers himself back down the rack. Push up, climbs himself up the rack, lowers himself down there. You guys, I should have asked first, you guys know what a burpee is? Yeah. Burpees when you get down, do a push-up, come up, jump up, come down, push up. So that was his jump up. Climb himself up the rack, lower himself back down, push up. He did that 15 times. So I mentioned at the beginning, this kid's 12 years old. What do you suppose that kid's prospects are for success in life? I wonder what he would have been like if his legs had worked. Okay? Would he have been a great athlete? Would he have been? Would he have been? Would he have been? That's not his lot in life. Does that challenge that he's undergoing somehow make him better and stronger so that he doesn't go in the path of athletics, but he goes in the path of something else much deeper? Perhaps. By the same token, there was another 12-year-old at the school at the same time who was being raised by her grandmother, who comes into class and doesn't want to train because she says that she hurt her toe at school that day. I remember looking at her, looking at the kid climbing the rack, looking at her, looking at the kid who climbed the rack and going, which of these kids do you think is going to be more successful in life? I think back to Michael. I haven't talked to him in a few years now, 3 or 4 years now, but I think back to him and just go like, wow, that guy, like, I don't know, what am I going through? What's my excuse? What's my excuse? You know, any injury I have, I'm thinking of this woman who trains at my gym right now. A year ago, I was kind of like going to the gym. I knew the gym. They had a fundraiser a year ago for one of their members who was in a car accident. She used to train there and she got injured and she couldn't walk anymore, spinal surgeries, blah, blah, blah. It took me a minute to realize this was the same person. A year ago, this person couldn't walk. She was doing physical therapy 2 or 3 a day, 5 days a week, I think it was, 6 days a week, so that she could learn how to walk again. And then she competed in a tournament this past Saturday. She wasn't ever supposed to walk again, much less was she ever supposed to do jiu-jitsu again. And I look at Beto, and sometimes her name is Beto, I look at her and I go, what's my excuse? You know, what is it? And she's all excited, man. She's jazzed about being there, and she should be. And everybody who sees her, I just think, like, I hope people understand, like, I can look at her and appreciate there's a motivation, because there's something that Michael has taught me, and there's something that Beto teaches me, which is that it's possible. It's possible. So I ask you that question. If you've got no legs, and I tell you to climb Cowles Mountain, I imagine the overwhelming number of us wouldn't even think about it because it's not possible. Is it possible? Yeah, I've seen people do it with no legs. What do? They climb, they crawl, they do what they have to. They do whatever it takes. And the funny thing is, they're doing it for fun. Imagine climbing the highest peak in San Diego, with no legs for fun. What do you suppose they do when they have to? What do you suppose they do when their career depends on it, when their livelihood depends on it, when the people they love depend on them? They probably do way more than any of us ever even think is possible, because they believe it's possible. And that's the thing, you have to believe it's possible. And that would be the key, I think, the very beginning point of motivation. What's the thing you want to do in your life? And really think about that at some point. You won't pursue it unless you realize. I'm not saying believe, I'm saying realize it's possible. And once you realize it's possible, then you have to believe it's possible, because other people have done it. Somebody at some point in the history of the world has done it. Doesn't matter what it is. If there's like I said, I graduated from high school with a 1.8, and I ended up being accepted to Harvard later. Do you want to go to Harvard? It's not too late. It's possible. Oh, but I'm about to graduate here. My GPA sucks. So did mine. It's possible. Now I want to start a business, but there's a lot of businesses out there. It's possible. There's lots of businesses out there. Lots of them are thriving. Why not you? And that's a hell of a question. Ask yourself, why not you? Well, because, and you can probably come up with a list of reasons, probably the exact same thing that the person who did it can do. Come up with a list of reasons why it wouldn't be them, but it was. You have to motivate yourself with this belief that's possible. If you believe it's possible, that can fuel your willpower. It's developed by a belief in that things are possible. Your capacity is way more than you think it possibly is. If we take that kid, Michael, and we give him legs that work, I wonder if he'd be in school or if he'd be at football practice thinking like, oh, these sprints, I can't do this. Not even realizing that in some alternate reality, he's doing burpees on the equipment rack with no legs. Not knowing what he's capable of, not even realizing what his capacity is, because he never had to face it. Or never forced himself to face it. And that's what I suggest to you it is. The people who climb Cowles Mountain with no legs, they force themselves to do it, to teach themselves what's possible. And that's why it's important to test those boundaries for ourselves sometimes, to test those limits, to find out what you're capable of. People who believe in themselves, they do the things that give them reasons to believe. When you go up Cowles Mountain, right now, if you're out of shape and you feel like, oh, I can't even walk to class without puking, then go climb Cowles Mountain. You have to run it, walk it, lots of people do. When you get to the top, understand that you just did something that you wouldn't have thought was possible. And you might not enjoy the process, but once you get to the top of that thing, man, yeah. And then there'll be other things in your life that you wouldn't have necessarily enjoyed the process, except that you realize in the past, I've been successful. I can enjoy this process since I know that success is going to be at the top, around the corner. And then you find ways to enjoy the process. That's what makes it so much more fun. You're in a class that you can't stand. Find something in it that makes it interesting and fun. Even if it's the people next to you, no matter what it is. I had a class in college, geography in class in college, and what I found entertaining was the fact that the students hated that professor so much they would yell at him and shout at him in class at college because it was a geography class and this guy was always talking politics. Pissed the students off. So what did I do? I'd stir the pot. Tell them, professor. They need to hear it. And the other students seemed to know what I was doing. And it was really funny. He came up to me on the day of the final. The final exam was very difficult. Most of the students in the class were getting like C's and D's. He made it exceptionally difficult. He came up to me on the last day of class. We were doing a final. He put 20 maps of the world around the room. And he'd tell you on the exam, map 1, question 5. So everyone's tests were different. You're all looking for different things. And everything was totally unlabeled. It was a difficult quiz. And I'm looking at it, and he comes up to me and he goes, Mr. Scanlon. I said, yes. And he goes, excuse me, future Dr. Scanlon. I said, yes. And he used to do this thing with his hands where he talked like a Disney villain. He'd be like this, and he would say, future Dr. Scanlon, have you ever heard of the law of reciprocity? And I said, yeah, law of reciprocity. You get what you give. And he says, yes. He says, you have made my semester fascinating and fun. Go ahead and leave. You have an A in the class. True story. My girlfriend at the time, fighting every day, studying her ass off to try. She had a C in the class, and she had one of the highest grades in the class. And she said, and she just goes, "Is he serious?" I said, "Yep." I left. I got an A. She did very, very well, and she ended up with a B minus in the class. She did very well. I'm very proud of her at the time. Made her very angry. What is it that made that class fun for me? It wasn't going to be the geography. It had to be something else. And then when you find a way to make it interesting and fun, then you go every day. That's the key. Show up. Show up. Like Jorge was saying, you have to show up every day. Sometimes you have to find a way to motivate yourself. Sometimes it's because you're fascinated by the subject. Some days because you're motivated to get better. Sometimes it's just because you have to make it fun and humorous in some way. Does that sound familiar to anybody in here? How is it that I show up every day in this class? Despite everything, it's damn fun. It's hilarious. Even if not for you, at least hopefully you can all walk in and go, man, Scout's a crappy teacher, but you know what? He has a lot of fun. He laughs a lot. He enjoys it. He finds a way to enjoy it. And maybe finding a way to enjoy it encourages you to show up every day. And if you show up every day, you can't help but get better. 1% every day, sometimes 10%. But at the end of all of it, you find a way to motivate yourself. So I guess what I'm saying is that you have to motivate yourself. This is what people who believe in themselves do. They give themselves a reason to believe. And once you have a reason to believe, well, then you develop the habits. Showing up, putting in the effort, finding a reason, making it interesting and fun for yourselves. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.